Hey guys, this is Nick and welcome to my Linux experiment. I think it's time we talked about noobs and specifically newcomers to the Linux community and how they are the most important part of what we're building and they are the future of our community. So let's talk about this right after this. This video is sponsored by Linode. Founded in 2003, Linode is the largest independent cloud service provider built on open source. If it runs on Linux, it runs on Linode. Multiple distros are available, including Ubuntu, CentOS, Alpine, and of course Arch. The multiple server configurations make any app or service flexible and scalable to host a website, set up your own personal VPN, create a Nextcloud instance, host a game server, and more. Linode offers 24/7 support any day of the year, by phone or support ticket, regardless of your plan size. The simple pricing with monthly caps ensures that there is no hidden fees and a generous monthly transfer is built in, which means there is no large bill surprises like you get from AWS or Azure. Sign up today at linode.com/linuxexperiment to get your $100 in Linux server credits. The link is in the description. Oh, and before I forget, in addition to having great written documentation, Linode also just started their own YouTube channel where you can check out video tutorials and guides, information on Linux cloud computing, and guest appearances from various experts. Check them out at youtube.com/linode. Okay, so the first thing is, anybody starting using Linux is basically a noob. Like, it's a newcomer, somebody who's discovering the system, the operating system, the terminal, the various desktop environments. This is a noob. We all started as Linux noobs. And I think we really do need to bring more noobs inside our community. Why? Because I think it's important to bring some new people and introduce them to the advantages of using Linux compared to other proprietary operating systems, and make sure that they can discover the joy of being free, of choosing your applications, choosing your desktop environment, and generally being more privacy conscious, more security focused, and not just accepting whatever is shipped on their desktop or on the laptop. So what we really do need is new points of view. It's very easy to lose track of what's easy, what's complex, what has been a nightmare in the start but now seems pretty easy. We, as advanced users, or at least users of Linux for a specific amount of time, we know some things about the command line, about the desktop environments, about the distributions, the package managers, and we kinda lose track of what is hard to accomplish and what is easy. Just saying to someone, hey, it's really easy, just type this line into your terminal. It creates tons of problems for a beginner. What's a terminal? Where do I find it? How do I type this line? What does it mean? What's it going to do to my system? It's not clear and not easy. For us it seems easy, but for a newcomer it isn't. And I think we need these new points of view just to remind us of what we think is easy but really isn't compared to other operating systems. We know how to fix things pretty quickly. We know how to look it up online, we know a terminal, we know the command line, but a newcomer doesn't. It doesn't know these quirks, it hasn't gotten used to it, and I think we really need these newcomers to remind us that our systems are not as easy as we think they are. We also need better documentation and better online help, and these things can't happen if we don't bring noobs in. Most open source projects already have some amount of documentation available. There are user manuals, guides, first stores for desktop environments. Some amount of documentation and help is generally available. There are forums, tons of stuff. Problem is, this documentation is not very readable for noobs, and when you tell someone, like I said, to type a sudo apt install gimp, it's not readable, it's not understandable, they don't know where to type it, they don't know how to do it, and it just doesn't make the system look very user-friendly. Saying, open your software store, look for GIMP, click install, is a lot better for a newcomer than just telling him, just type this command line. We need to get rid of that mentality that, yes, sure, the command line will solve the problem of typing your tutorial faster, but it won't help the user grab their program faster, because they're going to have to look up a ton of stuff. It's going to raise so many questions. What's a terminal? Why do I type the command line? How do I type it? It's just more complex. And without those noobs, without the influx of new blood newcomers, we won't do better in terms of tutorials or documentations. If nobody asks us to do better in terms of documentation, we probably will never do it, because let's be honest, it's super boring to write documentation and tutorials. And the second positive side effect of that is that it might make us realize that actually the thing we thought was super easy because we fixed it in 2 command lines was not easy after all, and maybe should have been fixed in the first place without needing the command line. So it all comes back to the point of view thing. The newcomers will need better documentation, and by looking at what they need instead of ignoring them and saying, they're just noobs, they don't know anything, we can just learn from what they felt when they encountered your documentation, your tutorial, and maybe learn to improve on that to make sure that they have the best experience when they start up. Now, the noobs are also the future experts on Linux. they won't stay noobs for long, because when you start looking things up, trying to change your desktop environment, trying to change your distro of choice, trying to tweak your system, modify a setting using the command line, you learn a lot very fast. And that's the good thing about the hidden complexity that we don't perceive as complex anymore. It's a good thing. You can teach people to do stuff and to do stuff by themselves without blindly following an online guide like I make myself from time to time. They will learn. They will become the new experts and will replace progressively the part of the community that just dies off, leaves the Linux, moves to something else, or just gets bored. These guys are the new experts. They are the future of the Linux community, and if we don't bring them in to replace the ones that leave, or the ones that just lose interest in Linux, then our community will just die of old age, and it's not something that we want. It's not something that we should want. So if we prevent these noobs from coming in by super complex tutorials, by being very mean to them on forums, like saying, read the fucking manual, this is not helpful. We do not need to do that to people. We need to welcome them with open arms and take time to teach them. You remember how frustrated you were if you ever encountered somebody on the forum, you were asking a question, you just put a link on, let me Google that for you. Well, that's super frustrating. That is not helpful. That is something that you should not do to a newcomer. It's hostile. It makes people leave. It makes people not want to use your system and not join your community. And that's not something that we want. We want more people, not less. So we need to be more friendly to these noobs. And we need to work on the tools, the documentation, and on our behavior to make sure that when they come in, they are well received and they are welcomed. And also, let's not forget that these noobs, once they're interested in the Linux open source community, they might become Linux app developers. And I always hear people complaining about how Linux doesn't have apps, Linux lacks applications. Well, these new bloods are probably the most probable candidates to develop or work on open source applications. So the more noobs we welcome in, the more people we will have to work on projects. That's just how it goes. And that brings me to the last point. We need to treat our noobs right. And I know it can be super annoying to answer the same question for the 20th time that is already explained in the wiki. But ask yourself the question. If the user is asking the question on the forum, maybe they didn't find the wiki, maybe the wiki wasn't helpful, maybe it was written in a language that they didn't understand, maybe they couldn't find the wiki at all. You don't have to treat them badly just because they are asking a question that has already been answered somewhere else. It's not complicated to point them to the right answer, it's easy enough. It just takes a copy-paste basically from a link. So sure, some newcomers will never make the effort to try and learn anything and will ask in a very petulant manner. And these guys, yeah, you can ignore them. They are not friendly to you, you don't have to be friendly to them. But people who made the effort, they told you they looked everywhere, they can't find the issue, just don't say RTFM or read the wiki. It's not helpful. Point them out to the right page. Help them find what they are looking for and they learn by themselves. If we don't treat those noobs right, they will treat the new noobs, once they become experts themselves, they will treat the new newcomers very badly as well, because they have not been welcomed with open arms. They had to fight tooth and nail to find the information, to solve their issues. It gave them a bad first impression, but they worked through it, and then they think it's normal to react like that. Like, have somebody asking a question? Just tell them that they're a stupid noob and they should read the manual. They're gonna treat newcomers like that as well, so you just perpetuate the cycle of being hostile to newcomers, and that's not a good thing. So if we welcome all these noobs, we need them to have new blood, to have new points of view, and they need to be welcomed. They need to be well introduced inside the Linux community. If we keep teaching them to demand instead of asking, if we keep letting them be sure that they know instead of trying to learn, then we just reproduce the cycle that we had when entering in contact with the Linux community in the first place. Some people might have great experiences, but a lot of them also had very bad first impressions on Linux, and probably some of them just gave up. We need to break the cycle of being arrogant, being elitist, being hostile. It is not a good look for us, and it is not a good look for any newcomer that might want to try to get into Linux. We need more users for the desktop Linux, we need more testers for open source apps, and we need more developers for these applications and for our system of choice. And these categories are porous. A user might become a developer, might become a tester, might become a maintainer, packager. These guys are needed to be introduced into the wider open source community and take their place in it, whether it just be Linux desktop users or full-on developers for the Linux kernel. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that we need to leave the Linux community in better shape than when we found it. And being hostile to newcomers and refusing to accept that new people might want to use your system of choice is just not how we're going to succeed. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. What do you think could be done to welcome more people into the open source community? What actions could we take? Let me know in the comments. If you liked the video, don't hesitate to leave a thumbs up. If you disliked it, thumbs down. And you can also subscribe and turn on notifications for more opinion pieces like this. If you really enjoyed the video, I have a Patreon page. You can support the channel by joining my Patreon members or my YouTube members, and you'll get access to a monthly exclusive Patreon cast and the right to vote on the various new topics I'll work on the next month. So take a look at the link in the description below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!